This is Living Catholic with Father Don Wolf. This show deals with living the Catholic faith in our time, discovering God's presence in our lives, and finding hope in His Word. And now, your host, Father Don Wolf.
Welcome, Oklahoma, to Living Catholic. I'm Monsignor Don Wolf, pastor of Sacred Heart Parish and rector of the Shrine of Blessed Stanley Rother. And there's a penetrating question that affects all of us, and that is, why is prayer so hard? While that's a valid sentiment, it's not a question most people ask. As a matter of fact, they almost never ask it, but instead they ask, how do I best learn to pray? They ask it this way because of a variety of reasons, the premier one being that they don't want to appear like they've tried to pray and found it difficult. It's the last thing about their lives that they want to admit. Instead, they ask about technique or a particular kind of prayer they've heard of. They do this rather than admitting they find the whole thing more intricate and more difficult than they've imagined. Behind this embarrassment is also the presumption that we're all supposed to know how. It should be something natural to us to pray. They're afraid to admit that when it comes to this aspect of their humanity, they've been shortchanged or left out, or they become too perverse to be sensitive to it. But whatever the obfuscations or misdirection, they still want to get an answer to the question that they don't ask, which is, why is praying so hard? Of course, it shouldn't be that way. Praying is, first of all, communication, and we're all born communicators. Babies learn to talk early in life, and once sparked, their talking doesn't stop until they stop breathing, all things remaining normal. We are homo communicator. Several years ago, I was part of settling a Guatemalan family here in Oklahoma City. They were journalists who'd gotten in trouble with their government, and they'd had to flee their home country. They came to Oklahoma City with nothing much more than a change of clothes and their 2 children, age 6 and 7. We had to work to secure a house and furniture for them ahead of time, and on the day of their arrival, we met them at the airport and brought them to their new home. It was near the cathedral in a mixed neighborhood. As they moved in, we were scurrying about trying to make them feel at home, showing them the details of the house and appliances. Their children were sitting quietly in the living room when a little girl from next door walked in and sat with them. She was about 6 years old. She began to talk with them. They spoke only Spanish. The girl from next door spoke only Vietnamese. But in a few minutes, she had them sitting on the floor around the coffee table, playing with some of the things that she brought over, talking to them nonstop. That she knew no Spanish at all didn't stop her for a moment. After a few minutes, each child could just say what he wanted with no barriers or embarrassments. Whether this is classified as communication could be argued, but she definitely practiced the communication she'd learned next door, as did the kids from Guatemala. So maybe they were not man the communicator in practice, but they were certainly man the speaker in every aspect, which is the natural state for us. We're born to speak, born to communicate, and we do with a ferocity and definiteness that staggers those who study such things. Our capacity to form thoughts and then share them with intricate certainty is amazing to behold. Every language has a complexity and a range to it that can be almost infinite. And this infinitude isn't restricted to the learned and to the credentialed. It also seems to be an attribute of our humanity in every aspect. When the study of languages was first codified and detailed in the 19th century, professors went into the field to study and to describe the variety and variations of languages all over the world. They also went to ancient manuscripts to learn the details of languages from antiquity. Their presumptions were that as human society developed, their languages became more and more intricate and expressive as the societies developed their self-understanding and technology. When they got into the field, however, they found the exact opposite. The more ancient the language and the older the version of the language was, the more complicated and intricate it turned out to be. This is as true in English as it was in Greek and Hebrew. That is to say, from the beginning, our ancestors communicated in detailed and explicit ways. Communication is natural to us. We strive to make sure we can say what we want, and that, when we say it, we're understood in all manner of subtlety and nuance. We like to talk, and we like to be understood, and we do it in the most intricate ways. Of course, our communication capacities are cited within the awareness that there is always a distance between what we say and what is heard. And that's after we become aware of the natural space between what we want to say and what we end up saying. It's uncommon to be completely aware and capacious enough to always know exactly what to say before it's said, as settled and certain as if we were reading our words off of a billboard. Most of the time, we're thinking and talking at the same time, exploring and probing all the while we're speaking, searching for the right way to communicate, even as we're looking for exactly what it is we are communicating. Our conversation is the means by which we actually find what we're looking for as we go about the process of thinking and judging and deciding. That's why when we talk about the importance of free speech, we're not just endeavoring to make sure everybody can mount their soapbox to declaim aloud. We're also guaranteeing the right to form and sharpen we're also guaranteeing the right that everybody has the right to form and sharpen their own thoughts in the process of communicating. Without talking, there's not a lot of thinking, at least for most of us. And that highlights the process by which we work to form the words we intend. We also know there's the difficult challenge of trying to describe what we think or speak to the nuance of what we're feeling. How many times have we written down what we're thinking and then, looking over it, see that it's only a faint image of what we really wanted to say? Not only that, the more precise we'd like to be, the more intensely we work to make sure it's just right. As Mark Twain said once, describing how long it would take him to prepare for an hour-long presentation, when told that the presentation would be just 15 minutes, he said, well, then it'll take 3 times as long to prepare. Putting the right words in the right place, conveying the right shade and aspect of our thoughts, is real work. Speaking rightly isn't easy. How many times have we said something we didn't really mean or used a word inadvisedly that interrupted what we truly wanted to communicate? It's not easy to communicate, which is why I suppose we spend so much time trying to do it. And we face all these same challenges when we attempt to communicate with God. We feel like it should be natural. And in paradise it was. Unencumbered by the complications of our fallen nature, we could commune with God directly and without confusion. According to the descriptions in Genesis, Adam communed with God easily and directly. The realm of God touched the realm of human life in Eden. It's only natural to imagine we were at one with God's presence in every way there. Of course, it was also native to our nature to experience the uninterrupted flow of presence and awareness by way of the heart, as natural as seeing a lake of water and knowing that it be wet and cool. All of the measures of our personality and each aspect of our humanity was accessible and integrated with one another in paradise. The impulses of our heart, the thoughts of our intellect, the instincts of our nature, and the appetites of our being, they were all woven together perfectly in a pattern of beauty and ease. To feel an urge was to know its origin and to trust its purpose. To have a thought was to speak it perfectly. To sense a presence was to understand its meaning. And every part of our humanity was balanced and transparent. Virtue was as natural as laughter, and constraint was as built-in as appetite. So when Adam communicated, there was nothing hidden, nothing incomplete, and nothing unbalanced. His thoughts were private, but his words were transparent. He knew how to communicate. But we don't live in paradise any longer. The structure and expectations of relationship are altered by our fallen nature. Every attempt at relating is covered in confusions and uncertainties. It is mediated through the fractured memories and incomplete capacities we carry around. Nothing is simple or straightforward in this world of ours. What we feel is mixed up with what we know, so that our heart and our intellect can be strangers to one another. Our thoughts can tumble around in our minds so rapidly and in such an unsteady way, we all know what it's like to believe 2 contradictory things at the same time. And the different levels of knowing are as mixed together and sometimes as indivisible as wine mixed with water. Often we hardly know what we're truly feeling and seeing. Or as Blaise Pascal said once, the heart has its reasons of which reason knows nothing. And yet, we were made for paradise. We were built, so to speak, for heaven. Our expectations go beyond our experience of jumble and brokenness and reach across our confusions. When we communicate, we expect to be heard and understood. We're disappointed when we're not, even if we've experienced miscommunication 1,000 times. When another speaks to us or assumes how we're feeling, we're often put off by him because he's on a different level or perspective than we are. Yet we're frustrated he doesn't understand our situation or respond to our needs. We're put off because he just doesn't get us. Our presumptions are beyond our experience. They're aimed at the Garden of Eden, not at the jungle of misunderstanding. So we shouldn't be put off by finding out it might be difficult to relate to God's presence well in our lives. Not just because God is invisible and unknown, but also because our own hearts are foreign territory, filled with the detritus of a confused and jumbled life. So much so, we're continually surprised at what happens on that level of communication. Although we are people of the heart, we have a hard time navigating that territory, although it is as close to us as we are to ourselves. That's the first difficulty. To pray is to be attuned to the voice of God speaking. God can speak to us on whatever level he chooses and at whatever time. Those are the examples we all long for, that God would simply speak to us, giving us the instructions for our lives and responding to the needs and wants we talk to him about. The great story of Mother Teresa is that she had a series of visions of Jesus himself, talking about her mission and her place in God's plan. According to her, it was as if Jesus was visiting with her, talking face to face, one person to another. St. Faustina claimed to have had such communication, God speaking directly and unaffectedly with her. It was the gift of the revelation she shared with everyone. After all, people connect with one another just this way. Their relationships become deep and binding with such words. And certainly it can be that way with God. Not only that, our first contact with the presence of God in our lives can be the scriptures we've been given as the product of God's revelation. These come to us in words. Of course, there's more to the Word of God than simply words. For example, no one would expect the words of a boyfriend that he says to his girlfriend, as if they were recorded and read back, to be the perfect description of their relationship to one another. So also the words we hear in the Scriptures. They are the invitation to come to know more about the relationship of God to us, but they're not the whole content of the relationship. But the Word does come to us by way of those words that we read and hear. There are many saints who had the experience described by John Wesley, who felt a strange warming in his heart upon studying and praying with the Scriptures. After all, why do we read the Scriptures at Mass? We read them precisely because we claim they are God speaking to us. But God doesn't always speak in such a manner. Just as in all our intercommunications, the connection we experience is on another level completely, not by words and gestures, but by way of the heart. Just as a mother connects to her daughter by the way their hearts are linked to one another, so God can communicate to us in the same way, in heartfelt connection. Just as a mother knows her children, their likes and responses, even beyond what they say, so God communicates with us in the same manner. This level of communication is real and certain. It's simply beyond words, or at least is beyond our capacity to describe in words. Unlike the voices we normally hear, this is a voice that speaks to us on the most fundamental level. And since this inmost level is also a broken place, part of our broken and displaced humanity, we have to tidy up the place if we want to listen well and be able to pay attention. Which means the first response to the desire to pray is to spend some time putting things in order in our lives. It's not easy to listen because it's not easy to pay attention. In all of our chattering, we will often struggle to get to the depth of our hearts. And that's where God is often speaking. For some of us, especially among men, this is truly foreign territory. We men are often not schooled to trust our hearts or to invest in them with any certainty. While I don't know if this has been the case in every society at every time, it certainly has been the case among us in our time. It makes so much of what we hear about seem incomprehensible to our ears and expectations. Take Jesus' call to his disciples in the gospel. When Jesus spots Matthew, the tax collector, and calls him, Matthew leaves his post and follows Jesus at that moment. Immediately, he sets aside his position and his learning, his friends and his comfort, and follows Christ. And this transformation seems to be based on no more than Jesus' presence and the few words that are exchanged between them. The same seems to be the case with Peter and James and John. They lay down their nets, leave their father behind, and follow Jesus. This comes with little more than a few words spoken by Jesus in their presence. Their business and their responsibilities, their future and their families, they all come second as they encounter the presence of Christ. Words don't seem to be adequate to their impulse or to their response. It must be from the heart they're responding, not from the intellect or from reason. We do respond from the heart, of course. It would be hard to find a groom in the marriage season who would describe his connection to his beloved as a solely rational decision, prompted by the pluses and minuses he reasoned out and measured carefully. But in our hearts, in our society, we're not normally attuned to such responses, or they are only intermittent. Or we might say, the landscape of our hearts is notable for not being particularly cultivated. It remains a thicket of untrained and dense growth, liable to hold up any explorer who seeks to traverse it. When something lands there or passes through it, it's hard to see and difficult to make out. This is often why the first impulse to pray is met with the flat language of rote prayers and common phrases. The tangled countryside of our interior life has to be met with some stern tools in order to make some headway. And to be honest, it can be the case that prayer never gets much beyond these formulae. They're adequate and complete models of what we could say and might say if our hearts were given to decent cultivation and seasonal cares. But our hearts are not, and so the prayers we learn are helpful and at least adequate in just about every way. In fact, many of our ancestors were perfectly content to use these rote prayers for a lifetime as windows into what their interior lives might become. Praying with intensity and fervor, they could glimpse a deep relationship with God and be drawn into its depths, even if they never really stepped into the geography of their hearts with any enthusiasm. But rote prayers are not quite enough for us. We also desire a more complete level of encounter with God. At least in our age we do. We want a level of communication and interchange that satisfies us on all levels. Our hunger to commune with God is still prompted by the appetites cultivated in Eden, and we long for the communion that Adam shared. It was written into us. We thirst for the deep and the meaningful, something beyond what is standard and common. That's what we normally mean when we ask how to pray. A relationship deep and satisfying. That's the treasure we're looking for. And the X on the map of our lives seems to be already marked on our personalities. We only have some digging to do. And this is the second most important conclusion to come to. Seeking to pray comes about only with some effort. While we hunger at the most natural level, we only get to it by putting in the work necessary to achieve it. It's like an image I once heard describing a good marriage. The image is that growth in prayer is like watching a duck swim across a pond. On the surface, where we can see, the duck glides across the water stately and sure and naturally. Under the surface, though, the duck is paddling furiously, its feet pushing against the yielding water in order to make a headway across the pool. There's no progress without paddling. This is a truth in the spiritual life as much as it is for Anatine wildlife. At the same time, we're as built for this deepening prayer as a duck is built for the water. We can take to it naturally if we pay attention to what we see and experience. And as in any endeavor, the learning is in what it takes to see and to know. This requires patience and humility. If you grew up in New York City and you went to Elk City in June and saw combines crawling through the wheat fields there, you'd have no idea what you were seeing, and certainly you'd know nothing of the quality or content of the crop being harvested, even if you knew there was a crop to harvest. It would take patience and effort to come to know what you're looking at, even as you could look and see from any window or fence line. In the same way, if you were from Elk City and went to New York City, you would be deaf and blind to the intricacies of street and traffic and schedule and weather. It'd take a long time to learn to be at home. You'd have to be patient. So it is with the life of prayer. Patience and perseverance are the premiums. And finally, what must be said is what was most often forgotten when exploring the first stages of growing in prayer. All communication is two-way. Relationships are built by the common exchange between two or more people. Simply saying is not enough. For the communication experience to be integral and real, it has to be dialogical. This is what's mostly forgotten or never noticed. The one who prays needs to dispose himself to receive and to give, to deepen his heart, even as he's probing the heart of God. The best relationships develop in the context of honesty and truth. In the back and forth between friends, for example, their friendship grows as they are truthful to one another and with one another. This grows as their friendship grows. They become better friends as they know more of the truth of each other. Reciprocally, the truth of one another is deepened as their friendship becomes better. It's the same in the interchange and relationship building in prayer. In fact, about 90% of the techniques of prayer are so that the one praying can begin to pay attention and become honest in the relationship that he desires to deepen. I always think of the Thomas Merton description that it takes a monk years to put out of his mind that when he's praying, he's also thinking that other people are looking at him praying, thinking that he must be holy because he looks like he's praying so well. It's an honest confession from him and one that we can keep in mind. When we want to be serious about our prayer, we should remember that we should be honest with ourselves and seek to commune with God, not just be content with the words we say or the images that we like. Prayer is at the heart of the Christian life. It's the fuel powering us to grow in all of the attributes of charity and faithfulness and hope. What we should be working at is learning to pray. Back in just a moment. Welcome back to our final segment, Faith in Verse. We have a poem today called If There Be Angels. If there be angels, and we all say there are, what would their shape and form be like? The blonde boys with feathered wings wide apart? Maybe wispy glimpses bright, sparks in flight. In fact, would we ever know, were we to witness angelic visitation that would occupy our place? Since spiritual creatures such as these would test our fitness to see and know what we could recognize and pace. Why wouldn't each be the size of houses or mountains, or a mere breath like a memory floods our minds, as water fills a lake, a pond, or a fountain, or an idea lights up each question we find? But they are messengers from the courts of heaven's light, traveling on into the slops of our tough places. We should notice when they arrive in flight, and listen when they turn to reveal their faces. That what we must know from God's own revelation, for our good and the world's opening door in front of us, that we could act in fullest joyful cooperation, and pass to pure light from the motes of ash and dust. That is, if there be angels. We are here every week. We hope that you can join us at those times, as we continue to pursue what it means to be living Catholic.
Living Catholic is a production of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City for Oklahoma Catholic Radio. To learn more, visit okcr.org.